Good afternoon, YouTube, and welcome to the Piper Report. So, you see the name of the article here. Trump ends covert CIA program to arm anti-Assad rebels in Syria. A move sought by Moscow. Yes, they just had to throw that in there. A move sought by Moscow. How about a move sought by almost every one of Donald Trump's supporters? How about a move sought by almost every Ron Paul libertarian? There's nothing wrong with not wanting to go to war. There's nothing wrong with funding rebels overseas, stopping the funding of rebels overseas so they can overthrow dictators, so we can set up puppet governments that always end up worse than they were to begin with. Nothing wrong with that. But they had to bring Russia up because this has to be connected with Russia. If it's not connected with Russia, then their story would be good for Trump. It would be good for Trump's base, good for the libertarian base, and good for many people who think we do not need war. That people who do not want war. So they got to twist this a little bit. They got to twist this article and make it look like it is Moscow's decision. Like it is because we want to help Moscow out. We want to make Russia the big bad boys in the world. And we want to subside. So, way to go, Washington Post. You couldn't help yourself within the first sentence. President Trump has decided to end the CIA's covert program to arm and train moderate Syrian rebels battling the government of Assad, a move long sought by Russia, according to U.S. officials. The program was a central plank of a policy begun by the Obama administration in 2013 to put pressure on Assad to step aside. But even its backers have questioned its efficacy since Russia deployed forces in Syria 2 years later. Officials said the phasing out of the secret program reflects Trump's interest in finding ways to work with Russia, which saw the Anti-Assad program as an assault on its interest. The shuttering of the program is also an acknowledgement of Washington's limited leverage and desire to remove Assad from power. So with all this being said here, is Assad a bad guy? Possibly. There is a lot of propaganda. Yes, people have said Assad has done bad things, tortured people, and I'm sure he has. But if we overthrow him, who is going to lead in his spot? Who is going to take over his spot? It's going to be someone who's not going to be able to control their country, so Syria will be flooded with more Islamic rebels and terrorism, just like Iraq. So we have to keep someone in there. And if you actually listen to Assad, he does seem like an intelligent person. I don't believe for a second that he used chemical weapons on his people. I've done a false flags video where a Turkish official admitted that it was them in 2012 that did the chemical Syrian attacks. So I don't believe that for a second. I'm not even sure about the propaganda towards Assad. Yes, Assad may be bad. I mean, his wife doesn't look like she'd be bad. I think she was raised in England and Oxford. She's like a really, really important person there. All I know, though, is if we would overthrow Assad, we would see the same thing that has happened in the past. Rebel terrorist groups setting up a stronghold, setting up a foundation, and killing each other and making things worse, which requires us to send more money and more resources over there to try to minimize the war going on there. So we might have to send troops there. It costs us money. It costs us money to feed the military-industrial complex. But when that happens, they have to expand their businesses. When that happens, they can fund their lobbyists. They can fund those politicians in Congress to help them get more funds. It all comes down to the neocons wanting to fund the military-industrial complex by increasing the budget on the military by an obscene amount. When we outspend Russia 10-1, people think that Russia is the biggest danger to the U.S., that we have no chance of ever defeating them if we go to war, so we have to keep stocking up our military. We have to put ourselves in positions that allow us easy access to Russia, if they decide to get out of line. This simply isn't true. We outspend Russia 10-1 on the military. 10-1. Think about that. 10-1. I am not worried about Russia at all. I am not. I'm more worried about people in the government acting in a statism way, trying to dictate foreign policy by creating turmoil overseas, so we have to send more money overseas and more troops overseas. I'm more worried about that than I am about Russia. I'm more worried about that than I am about China. This propaganda that we have to be everywhere in the world because if we are not, there is no peace. There is no freedom. It's completely nonsensical and it lacks any type of evidence. It lacks any type of foundation to accurately say this is indeed the case. Because it is not the case. Just 3 months ago, after the U.S. accused Assad of using chemical weapons, Trump launched retaliatory airstrikes against the Syrian airbase. At the time, UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, who was a joke, said that in no way do we see peace in that area with Assad at the head of the Syrian government. Again, if you looked on YouTube after that, there weren't many people happy with Trump. Trump's base were angry at him for doing that because he did so without any investigation. If he would have done investigation, he would have known that there were enough things happening there that casted doubt on whether Assad actually did that. And like I said earlier, I don't think Assad did it in 2012. We know from my false flag video that a Turkish government official admitted to it, and I don't think they did it again here. What I also think about UN Ambassador Nikki Haley is that she is a joke. On her first day of the job, she right away said that Putin is a war criminal. Russia is a horrible, horrible country. And then she said something about Assad. A diplomat, an ambassador, is supposed to be able to bring peace with each other, talk to each other in a non-violent way, in a diplomatic way. That's why it is in their job title. Yet, right off the bat, she disrupts that job title. She disrupts that concept. And what she does, she calls countries enemies off the bat. Nikki Haley is a neoconservative's dream. If you listen to her in the UN, you will see what I mean. She is a dream for them. She is the most war-hungry, power-hungry person, probably in Trump's cabinet. I think even more so than Masters. And McMaster's, he's a... I don't know, I'm not a fan of McMaster's either, but he's good friends with John McCain, so I'm glad. This is a big... Trump's decision here to stop this is a big hit on the neoconservative movement, and I'm very, very happy this is indeed happening. So, way to go, Trump. This is a good thing. You kind of promised your people. You promised your people, your base, that you would not want to topple regimes. As long as you maintain, as long as you keep on this trajectory, you will be praised because this is good. Officials said Trump made a decision to scrap the CIA program nearly a month ago after an Oval Office meeting with CIA Director Mike Pompeo and National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster ahead of a July 7th meeting in Germany with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Spokesman for the National Security Council and the CIA declined to comment. After the Trump-Putin meeting, the U.S. and Russia announced an agreement to back a new ceasefire in southwest Syria along the Jordanian border, where many of the CIA-backed rebels have long operated. Trump described the limited ceasefire deal as one of the benefits of a constructive working relationship in Moscow. The move to end the secret program to arm the anti-Assad rebels was not a condition of ceasefire negotiations, which were well underway, said U.S. officials, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss the secret program. Yes, of course. There always has to be an anonymous source happening here. Every single article we hear from the New York Times, every single article we hear from CNN, from Washington Post, has people who do not want to be named, sources who cannot be named. And as we know from CNN, a lot of these sources make up false stories, which is why CNN had to fire 3 of their high-ranking journalists, because they based a story on one of Trump's transition officials, Anthony Scaramacca, I think pronounced his last name, that he was working with the Russians in a nefarious manner. So they had to fire 3 reporters because it turns out that that anonymous source fed him a bunch of bullcrap. It was untrue. CNN was caught spewing fake news. In order to properly defend themselves and to try to rebuild their own credibility, they fired 3 people. And it didn't work. It didn't work at all because CNN has no credibility. But yes, so whenever... I always question, and you should too, whenever you read anonymous sources, take it with a grain of salt, especially in this day and age. Back in the day, you maybe... See, what would happen back in the day is people would have anonymous sources, and then they would use that material to talk to somebody who who was willing to give their name out, who didn't want to be anonymous, and then they were able to connect the dots that way and report that story that way. Now that no longer happens. If an anonymous source tells them something, they just write about it. I'm a big fan of the trilogy The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest. For all those who haven't read those books, I highly, highly recommend you do. They are probably my favorite trilogy. Stieg Larsson was a brilliant author, and I'm sad that he died. But anyways, one of the main characters, Mikael Blomkvist, the names are kind of funny because this is a Swedish novel that was dictated in English. Mikael Blomkvist works for a magazine, and he is seeing someone named Erika Berger, who works for the same magazine. They're kind of having an affair on and off. Anyways, Erika Berger gets a job at another magazine as the editor-in-chief. Well, Elizabeth Salander, who is a girl with a dragon tattoo, she's about to go to court for some stuff I won't get into because I don't want to ruin the novels because they are truly, truly great. And anyways, one of the reporters that works for Erika Berger gets a story from a cop, and the cop makes up a bunch of lies about Elizabeth Salander to tarnish her reputation before the court hearing. Well, Berger catches him on it, and she says, should we just post this because we can't prove it's not true? And the guy's like, well, no, but we have a journalistic responsibility, don't we, to report everything? And then Berger said, well, we also have a responsibility to make sure what we're reporting is indeed true. So we can ask ourselves, why would this person give me this story? Why would he want me to report this story on a major news organization? And I know I kind of went on a little digression there, but that's a perfect example of how you should treat sources that do not want to be named, that you cannot trust fully. Because how do you know that they have the good of America at heart? Or they could be making anything up at all. But I won't go into that anymore because it's kind of off topic, but I recommend those books. I seriously recommend those books. The first one is like a mystery one. The second and third are kind of like one big giant one dealing with crime and government corruption and stuff like that. Very, very good books. The first movie's pretty good, and I am going on a huge digression right now, and I do not mean to, but check out the books. Where's I at? Let's scroll down a little bit. We are falling into a Russian trap, said Charles Lister, a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute, who focuses on the Syrian resistance. We are making the moderate resistance more and more vulnerable. We are really cutting them off at the neck. I wonder if I would go to Twitter right now and type this guy's name in, if I would see he is following John McCain. I wonder. I might have to try that out. I'm going to copy that. Others said it was a recognition of Assad's entrenched position in Syria. Alright, the rest is kind of just ranting, nothing really big. I went over the crux of the story here, so this is good. This is a good thing for Trump to do. This is really good. He is doing what his base voted him in to do. We don't need wars. We don't need to topple regimes. We don't need to do any of this stuff. So, way to go, Trump. Stay away from the neocons, and you will see your administration do very, very well in the future. Stay away from the neocons. And I'm done.